Today from the global lane, Israel's historic decision and Gaza terror now in American streets.
They have mainstreamed the delegitimization of Jews. Violence is the natural outcome of that process.
South Korea's new pro-China president. What his election means for Christians on the Korean peninsula. No more balloon launches of the gospel into North Korea, I'm sure.
And including people going back and forth across the border. All that will be attempted to be shut down.
An Adventist church banned and its pastor on trial for extremism in Kyrgyzstan.
And he's facing incitement charges, which could put him in prison for up to 7 years.
And it's all right here on the global lane. Gaza terror reaches the streets of America, killing an Israeli embassy couple in Washington, D.C., and less than 2 weeks later, injuring an 88-year-old Holocaust survivor and others in Boulder, Colorado. Well, joining us to share his insights on growing anti-Semitic terror in the United States and with the latest on Gaza and Israel is Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief Jonathan Tobin. Jonathan, I want to discuss U.S. anti-Semitic terror in a moment. However, there's a new development in Jerusalem. Israel's cabinet has just made a historic decision to authorize the establishment of 22 new communities in Judea and Samaria. Is this a strategy to block international efforts to create a Palestinian state? What's happening? Why?
I think in a sense it is, but it's also just an extension of what is the reality, the facts on the ground. Let's understand something. When Israel says it's building new communities in Judea and Samaria, it's not taking land away from any Palestinian Arabs. It's not stealing anything. This is state-run land. It's open land. It's more or less what in the United States we'd call a housing development, accommodating in land where Jews have the right to live, which has been guaranteed for over a century, that they can build houses and live and create communities there. There's nothing crazy about this. There's nothing extreme about it. But it also is a reassertion that Jews have rights there. Jews are not going to be denied those rights. And this government is determined to defend Jewish sovereignty. And also, we'll hear a lot that, this is something that is an obstacle to peace. If the Palestinian Arabs wanted peace, they'd have had a state 25 years ago. This is no obstacle to peace. If the Palestinians ever decide they want peace, they can have peace, but they can't have every piece of land where Jews live. And that's the point here.
Jonathan, in the past, President Trump has suggested he supports Judea and Samaria annexation. But what doesn't he get about Israel's perpetual state of war?
Yes, well, the thing is, President Trump, he's a peacemaker. He's a deal maker. He doesn't like war. And, of course, he's right not to like war. We don't want wars. Israelis don't want wars either. And President Trump, hates this idea of forever wars, commitments that just are open-ended, go on forever with no solution in sight, which is kind of why he wants to end the conflict in Ukraine. But the point is, Israel is stuck with a forever war because in order to end a war, both sides have to wish to end it. The Palestinians have had innumerable opportunities to end the conflict with the Jews over the land of Israel over the course of the last 100 years. They've rejected all of them. Hamas is committed to not merely the destruction of Israel, but the genocide of its people. That war against them and against their Palestinian Arab supporters is going to go on for a long time. You need patience to fight that war. And President Trump has many good qualities, but patience is not one of them. That's a potential source of disagreement with Israel. Also, his negotiations with Iran. Now we have to hope, that unlike, say, President Obama or President Biden, his objective in trying to negotiate with Iran is not to appease Iran, not to replace Israel and Saudi Arabia with an alliance with Iran, as he says that the Iranians are used to dealing with stupid people in the United States, and he's right about that. And he knows a good deal from a bad deal. But the truth is, there is no such thing as a good deal with Iran. They can't be trusted to keep to anything, and they can't be allowed to keep a nuclear program whose only objective is a nuclear weapon.
Jonathan, on to the U.S. Most Americans were shocked to see an admitted Egyptian anti-Semite unleash terror in the streets of Boulder, Colorado, of all places. So what caused that to happen?
What caused that to happen is the way our entire culture in the United States, our legacy media, the liberal mainstream media, academia, everything, they have all bought these lies about Israel committing genocide. They've bought it, they've been influenced, they've been indoctrinated in leftist theories like critical race theory and intersectionality that brand Jews and Israelis as white oppressors of people of color. These calumnies have an impact. It has delegitimized Jewish life and Israel in the eyes of many radicals. They've been chanting for genocide on college campuses all across the nation for the last year and a half. Why should we be surprised that, as has often happened in the past with the left, some of them resort to violence? Some of them, instead of just chanting for genocide in Israel, they decide they want to kill Jews here. We shouldn't be surprised about this. What is most shocking is not just the violence, which is horrifying. It's the fact that, as a whole, America has not risen up in revulsion. There have been no mass protests. This is not like when George Floyd was killed. There have been no mass protests. There's been no horror. There's no outrage. If this had been, imagine if this had been, a white supremacist killing a person, trying to incinerate people of color in Boulder, Colorado. The news cycle would have been endless. The outrage would have been endless. Instead, most of America, most of certainly liberal America and the legacy media, they moved on pretty quickly. There have been no mass revulsion in reaction to this. They have mainstreamed the delegitimization of Jews. Violence is the natural outcome of that process.
Okay, Jonathan Tobin, Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
The election of a pro-China president in South Korea. Could it lead to greater suffering for the most persecuted Christians in the world? Jeff King, the president of International Christian Concern, joins us to explain more about the possible impact of the election of Liberal Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung. Jeff, we know Lee is pro-China and favors improved relations with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. China did a lot to influence the election, so what might a South Korea transition away from politics of the past mean for China and North Korean Christians?
Well, there's a lot of things, Gary. So first of all, he's going to tilt the country towards China. He's going to tilt the country towards North Korea. North Korea, South Korea, depending on who's in charge, receives a lot of defectors from North Korea, a lot of them Christians. The church is very strong in South Korea and working in North Korea. So that's going to come under a lot of scrutiny. He's probably going to shut that down. He could impose restrictions on the global missionary movement from South Korea, which is massive. And the big way to look at this is that, in South Korea, there's a massive number of very strong Christians. So he can only move at so fast a pace before he would get thrown out of power. So he's going to push the limits without straining his base and exposing who he is. And
show favor to China, I'm assuming. So
he will.
I know your organization and other persecution ministries often rank North Korea as the world's worst persecutor of Christians. So tell us what life is like for Christians in North Korea.
It is a place, it is a country that is a prison. And for Christians, it is especially so. So if you're a Christian and you get caught, you're a real Christian, let's say you have a Bible and you actually believe and you're trying to follow faith, you're going to get locked up. Your parents will get locked up. Your kids will get locked up. And when I say locked up, they go into a prison camp, and it's where they're slowly starved. So they die out by disease, malnutrition, whatever. So the state can say, well, we didn't kill them. But that's what they're put to death. And they've put to death maybe even 1 million Christians. But North Korea is a very strange place. There's a story I like to tell. One defector told me this. He was a Communist Party loyalist. And he fell out of favor, and he was arrested and tortured. And he said it was such a horrendous experience that to this day, when he's falling asleep, he has to have headphones on with music just to keep the demons at bay, so to speak. Wretched, wretched place, a complete prison state full of torture and evil.
And Juche is the national religion. That's worship of the nation's president and his ancestors, the previous Kim. So tell us more about Juche.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. So basically, they created a mirror of Christianity within the country. So instead of God, you have the founder, the communist founder of the country. Instead of the son, you have his son. Instead of the Bible, you have teachings of the dynasty, and you're told to study those. And then on Sunday, you get together and you confess your misdeeds. And you pray for wisdom, and you berate each other and encourage each other to follow the state. And it's not by accident. This was all designed to exactly mirror Christianity. And the founder of Juche actually was a defector. So we have a lot of detail on it.
And Jeff, when people flee North Korea seeking freedom, many of them end up crossing the Yalu River into China, and often they seek out buildings with crosses attached, churches, because they've been told that people there will help them. What will a closer South Korea-China relationship mean for them, and how difficult will it be for them to make their way into South Korea, and do you expect South Korea will accept them or send them packing?
Yeah, what a great question. We've seen this before, unfortunately. So this isn't the first time that a candidate with money and influence from China or North Korea has been elected. So they will definitely say we're gonna focus more on dialogue with North Korea. Dialogue just means we're going to not put any pressure on them and let them do whatever they want. And with those defectors, they'll probably put a lot of scrutiny on that and shut it down. They're going to put pressure on efforts to bring the gospel into North Korea, and there's some amazing things happening. They're going to try to shut that down.
So no more balloon launches of the gospel into North Korea, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, that's exactly one of the things. Or as you know, the rice bottles floating down the river. All the different ways, and including people going back and forth across the border. All that will be attempted to be shut down. I'm not sure it will be.
What can our viewers do then finally here, Jeff, for their persecuted brothers and sisters in North Korea? And I know many don't want us to pity them, but they ask that we pray. So what should we pray?
Well, we pray for boldness, always for boldness. You know, persecution, Satan creates it, but God uses it. And he will use it to hone and sharpen his church and make a church that's dependent on him. And when that happens, his power really flows. So we pray for that boldness to come from the Spirit, for the Spirit to spread. And then practically, look, there's things to be done. You know, years ago, we took a secular station that was beaming content into North Korea, and we paid for the gospel programming to go in and for scriptures to go in. But there's practical help like that, and Bibles to be smuggled, and all kinds of things, as you said, the balloon launches, all kinds of things you can do to put Christianity into North Korea. So, but above all, again, we pray, and we pray for the release of his Spirit.
Okay, people can find out more at your website, persecution.org. Jeff King, President of International Christian Concern, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Persecution against Christians rising in Kyrgyzstan, now with a ban imposed on the True and Free Adventist Church. For those who may have difficulties finding the country on a map, Kyrgyzstan is in Central Asia, located between Kazakhstan and China. It's a former Soviet republic. Joining us to share some insights on this development is Felix Corley of the Oslo-based Forum 18 news service. Felix, why did the Kyrgyz government ban the True Free Adventist Church and label them extremists?
Well, this is what we don't really know. This is a very small religious community. It's one that meets for worship without registration, without state permission. But it's not dangerous. It does not violate the rights of other people or call for the rights of other people to be violated. But it seems that the National Security Committee, the secret police, decided to go after it. And they've previously gone after other communities, the Ahmadi Muslims, Falun Gong, the Chinese spiritual movement, and it tried to have Jehovah's Witnesses banned in Kyrgyzstan several years ago. Well, last November, they moved against the True and Free Adventist Church. It broke away from the mainline Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Soviet period. Many of its people there went to labor camps. One of its leaders, Vladimir Shelkov, died in a Soviet labor camp back in 1980. But they just thrown the book at them, basically. They raided the leaders' homes last November, arrested 2 of the people, tortured them in detention. One of them was sort of jabbed on the leg with looks like a cattle prod. We've seen the photos that he took straight after his release. But the leader, Pavel Schreider, he's been in prison, pre-trial detention, since last November. And in March, the court issued the ban, and the church members knew nothing about this because they said they notified the pastor, but he was already in jail. So at a hearing with only 4 people present, the judge, the judge's secretary, an official of the secret police, and the prosecutor who brought the case to declare the church extremist. These are the only people present as far as we can tell. And the trial has already begun of the pastor, Pastor Schreider, who is 65 years old, and he's facing incitement charges, which could put him in prison for up to 7 years.
Well, I understand from your report that 2 justice ministry experts evaluated the church teachings and arrived at the determination. Now, were these evaluators religious experts, Christians? Do they have theology degrees? How did they determine and assess extremism? What were they looking for specifically? Incitement to violence against other faiths? What was it?
They confiscated about 2,000 religious books from community members, many of them by Ellen White and other Adventist writers. This Vladimir Shelkov, the one who died in the Soviet labor camp, book about his thoughts and the preaching. And they sent them off to these 2 so-called experts nominated by the Justice Ministry. And they just went through the book looking for any comments, particularly about other faiths, and they alighted on points that various authors have made about Islam. But we can't see that these comments on Islam, one of the comments was that Islam distorts the teachings of Christianity by saying, that Jesus is not God and he's only a prophet. Well, these are theological debates that various Christians have among themselves, various Christians have with non-Christians and with other members of other faiths or with atheists. Is Jesus the Son of God? Is he not? Whatever. But these are theological points. They're not, in no way were these writers calling for anyone to take any actions against Muslims, to attack them, to harm them, anything like that.
And Felix, you cite a Russian religious studies expert who contends the analyses presented in court were unscientific and crudely written. Another expert described the charge of extremism as absurd. So why did the court not hear from these experts during the trial?
Well, the hearing they say the hearing was open, but there were only these 4 people. One of them was the prosecutor bringing the case. Another was from the secret police who was supporting the case. And my colleague spoke to the judge, spoke to one of the 2 experts, spoke to some of the people in the secret police. And they were really struggling to justify how it could be construed that any of the literature was calling for harming other people's human rights.
Tell us more. Why are they targeting people of other faiths and Christians? Why are they targeting them?
Well, they have banned many of those communities. They've tried to ban Jehovah's Witnesses, but that didn't get anywhere. I don't know, they backed away from that one. You can't tell, is it because they're going after Muslims and they want to show that there are some non-Muslims who are also being targeted? Do they really believe that these communities are somehow dangerous? I doubt that. I mean, the secret police have quite a tight control over society. So, why this small group of Christians of True and Free Adventists would represent any threat to the government. They represent no political threat. They don't stir up problems within society. They're not a unpopular group because most of the population never heard of them. So we're really left guessing. Is it just that the secret police want to prove to the regime that they're worth the pay that they're getting?
Well, it sounds like the old Soviet mindset, the communist mindset, is still in place there in Kyrgyzstan. So Felix Corley, Forum 18 News Service, thank you for sharing your time and insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me on.
America's ambassador to Israel, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, made some compelling comments this week about truth in media and the situation in Gaza. He linked the recent surge in anti-Semitic hate crimes, terrorism, and murder to what he describes as irresponsible reporting by major U.S. media outlets. Ambassador Huckabee accurately asserts that the New York Times, CNN, the Associated Press, and others accepted without verification Hamas propaganda that claimed Gazans were killed by Israeli defense forces while collecting humanitarian food boxes. This story was false, and in a rare act of journalistic integrity, the Washington Post admitted it got the story wrong. It's important to note that the spread of disinformation isn't limited to traditional American media. Leftist politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are also contributing to this issue.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents.
AOC isn't telling you the truth. The reality is that Israel has allowed many relief trucks into Gaza during the war. The government reported that 39,000 trucks delivered more than 840,000 tons of food during the first year of the war, with thousands more trucks delivering aid since then. Additionally, Hamas has confiscated and controlled much of the food aid provided to the people of Gaza during the conflict. They've redirected it to their fighters to ensure they have the strength to continue their fight against Israel. Hamas has also sold a significant portion of this aid, profiting from the people's hunger and desperation. As for the notion of genocide, the only genocide that Israel may be guilty of committing could be linked to the IDF's efforts to dismantle Hamas, a terrorist organization, rather than a protected group of people. So what is our responsibility as Christians, especially given that at least 25% of Gazans still support Hamas? God expects us to respond with the love of Christ. In Luke 3:11, Jesus said, "Whoever has 2 tunics is to share with him who has none, and whoever has food is to do likewise." Let us be discerning about the information we consume and the help we provide. May we give out of a spirit of generosity rather than obligation. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.